She looks at you and says it softly, maybe with a faint smile curling just enough to feel like an invitation, or maybe a challenge. I'm fine. Two words, so simple, so socially acceptable. But something in the air tightens. You feel it in your chest, like walking into a room where someone just whispered your name, but no one's there. Welcome to this space, a slow unraveling of the truth behind those words, where psychology meets quiet storms, and where Carl Jung's ideas will walk beside us, offering a mirror to the things we often avoid. You're here to see clearly now, and maybe even recognize your own reflection in hers. You notice the pause that follows her words, not a natural one. It's heavy, pregnant with unsaid things. Her eyes don't quite match the script. Maybe they flick to the floor, maybe they meet yours just a second too long, and yet, your brain, loyal to comfort, wants to believe her. She said she's fine. You tell yourself, so she must be. But your gut whispers something else. It always does. That moment right there is when you should feel the instinct to run. Not because she's dangerous, but because you're not equipped yet. You're standing in a psychological minefield. Untrained, uncertain, and worse, unaware that minds even exist. When a woman says, I'm fine, she's often standing at the gates of her own emotional fortress, and inside, years of unspoken disappointments, layered expectations, and maybe even ancestral wounds. It's not that she's hiding, it's that she's learned not to be seen. And if you believe her words at face value, you become complicit in the great forgetting, the forgetting of depth, of nuance. I've what Jung called the unconscious. That moment is not about logic. It's not about what she says, it's about what vibrates beneath what she says. Like hearing laughter echo in a hallway after the party's over. You sense it. A tension that doesn't belong to just this moment, but to every moment like it. And if you lean in closer, if you really listen, you'll hear the quietest part of her screaming. You think back. You've heard her say it before. I'm fine. When clearly, she wasn't. Maybe it followed a sharp silence in the car. Maybe after dinner, when her voice had flattened and her fork hit the plate just a little too hard. And each time, the words came out like a reflex, smooth, rehearsed. But underneath them, a script written long ago was playing on repeat. She didn't invent I'm fine. She inherited it, like a family heirloom passed down from women who learned that being agreeable meant staying safe. Girls taught not to cry too loud, not to need too much, not to take up too much space. She watched her mother do it. She watched every woman on screen smile through pain, joke through betrayal, look stunning while slowly imploding. And now, she's fluent in the language of pretending. I'm fine is armor, polished, polite, impenetrable. It keeps the world from asking questions she's too tired to answer. Because let's face it, when a woman dares to say how she really feels, she risks being labeled emotional, dramatic, unstable. So she shrinks. She sharpens her edges into something presentable. She becomes palatable. Jung would say this is the persona, the social mask crafted to please, to protect, to belong. But the longer she wears it, the more brittle it becomes. You might admire her strength, her independence, her calm. But what you're seeing is the performance, not the person. It's easier that way for both of you, because if she lets you see the truth, the raw, messy, inconvenient truth, will you stay, or will you flinch? Sometimes, when she says she's fine, she's daring you to notice that she isn't. Not with pity, not with solutions, just with presence, the kind that sees without judgment. Because she's tired of speaking a language no one seems willing to understand. And maybe, in that moment, you feel a faint discomfort rise in your chest. That's not her. That's you encountering the limits of your own conditioning, your own discomfort with emotional depth. You start to realize it's not just about this moment, or the last argument, or the dinner that ended with silence. It's about all the other times she swallowed the words she wanted to say, or the times she's turned pain into poise. Her "I'm fine" is the tip of an emotional iceberg that's been submerged for years, maybe decades. What's underneath? A labyrinth of repressed emotion, held together by the quiet desperation to be the good one, the understanding one, the woman who doesn't ask for too much. You might assume she doesn't want to talk, but have you ever considered she was trained not to, conditioned to keep the peace? Even when it costs her voice. Jung believed the psyche will do whatever it must to protect the ego from collapse, and for her, repression became a survival tactic. She represses the tears because they've been called manipulative. She represses the anger because it makes people uncomfortable. She represses even her joy sometimes, because too much of it might look arrogant. Every feeling she doesn't express becomes a secret lodged in her body. That's what repressed emotion does. It doesn't vanish. It burrows, and with time, she forgets where she ends and where the performance begins. Her real self gets buried under obligations, expectations, and endless unfairness. She smiles when she wants to scream. She hosts when she wants to hide. And you might never notice. Not unless you know what to look for. Not unless you're listening between the lines. Her self-denial is invisible because she's mastered it. She can even convince herself she's fine. That's the dangerous part. The repression becomes so deep, so complete, that her conscious mind no longer registers the tension. But her body remembers, her tone changes, her energy shifts. The sparkle in her eyes dims ever so slightly, and if you aren't paying attention, you'll miss it, and you'll think everything's okay. But deep inside, there's a pressure building, a quiet, seismic shift beneath the surface, a psychological tectonic plate waiting to snap. When it does, you won't see it coming. She smiles, and you feel something inexplicable stir inside you, an unease you can't quite name. You tell yourself she's calm, kind, even graceful in her detachment. But what if that smile is a mask? A beautiful, carefully crafted one that hides not peace, but a storm, according to you. What's denied in the conscious mind doesn't disappear. It retreats into the shadow. And when she says, "I'm fine," while her jaw tightens and her gaze drifts, that shadow isn't just present. It's humming beneath her skin. You sense something behind her eyes, like a room with the light off, but the door cracked open. You can't see inside, but you know it's not empty. Her "I'm fine" is the faint creak of that door, and what lies in there? Resentments never voiced, needs never met, fears she's been told are irrational. Her shadow isn't evil. It's just forgotten, repressed, misunderstood, and when it leaks out, it doesn't scream, it whispers. It shows up as sarcasm, withdrawal, or a sudden, inexplicable chill in the room. You try to make sense of it, but there's no logic here. This is the domain of feeling, of soul. The shadow doesn't speak in rational arguments, it speaks in symbols. Maybe you notice she starts giving, but it feels like punishment. She says yes, but you sense she means no. You begin to question her sincerity, or worse, your sanity. That's what shadow energy does. It confuses, it disorients. Because it doesn't play by the conscious rules, and here's the irony. She may not even realize she's doing it. The parts of her that were never allowed to exist don't just vanish. They go underground, and in that hidden place, they twist. Her smile may have once been real, but over time, it hardened into a performance, and now, she smiles to survive, not to connect dots. So when she says, "I'm fine," and you feel that flicker of dread, you're not imagining things, you're witnessing the moment the mask begins to slip, And if you aren't brave enough to meet what's behind it, then yes, run. She doesn't accuse you, not directly. She doesn't raise her voice, doesn't even change her expression. But slowly, you start to feel guilty, like you've done something wrong, even though you can't name what. Her "I'm fine" becomes a spotlight, and suddenly you're standing center stage with no script. This is the silent art of projection, and you've just stepped into the role she didn't know she cast you in. Jung described projection as the unconscious act of attributing your own disowned feelings to another. And when she's smiling but seething, when she's nodding but silently judging, she may not be fully aware that her pain has found a new home. You become the mirror for everything she hasn't processed. The unfinished arguments, the ungrieved losses, the shame that has never had a name, and now you feel it. Her tension coils round your spine. Her silence echoes in your chest. You start to question yourself. Was I insensitive? Did I miss something? You become hyper-aware, tiptoeing round invisible landmines, hoping to avoid another "I'm fine" that sounds like a warning shot. You're not sure how, but it feels like you're losing. What's terrifying is how normal it all seems. She's not yelling, she's not accusing, but every gesture becomes loaded. The way she places the glass on the table, the delayed response to your text, the extra 5 minutes of silence in bed. She doesn't need to say anything, because projection doesn't use words, it uses vibes, and suddenly you're the villain in a story you didn't know you were part of. She's not manipulating you, not consciously. She's simply trying to expel the weight of emotions she's never been allowed to express, and since they have no outlet, they find one through you. This isn't about blame, it's about blindness. Hers, yours, everyone's. Because we all project. We all bleed onto others when we haven't healed ourselves. So now, you stand in front of her, confused, frustrated, maybe even angry, and you tell yourself, she said she's fine. But deep down, you already know that wasn't a statement. That was a test. You try to meet her halfway. You ask if she wants to talk, if something's wrong, but she shrugs. It's nothing, she says, still smiling, still smooth, and yet there's a distance now. Not physical, but emotional, ancestral, bone deep. You are not just speaking to her in this moment. You're speaking through generations of unheard women. Women who were dismissed, misunderstood, told their emotions were irrational or dangerous. When she says "I'm fine" and you hear frustration beneath the calm, you're not imagining things. You're brushing up against what you might call a collective complex, a psychological inheritance passed down like DNA. It whispers through her blood. Don't be too much. Don't be a burden. Don't speak what cannot be fixed. So she doesn't say, "I feel abandoned." She says, "It's fine." She doesn't say, "I feel unseen." She says, "It's not a big deal." She doesn't say, "I'm afraid. I'll never feel safe with you." She says, "Whatever. It's nothing." And you think you're having a conversation about the dishes or the way you looked at your phone during dinner. But you're actually standing in the middle of a centuries-old mountain, one that has taught women to compress their truth into polite, palatable phrases, one that says if they do speak clearly, boldly, they will lose love, or worse. They will become the very thing they've been taught to fear, a difficult woman. So she guards herself, wraps her pain in pretty packaging, and you might take the package at face value. But if you do, you'll never really know her. You'll only ever know her adaptations. "I'm fine" isn't a white flag. It's a coded message. "I don't feel safe enough to be real with you right now." And that's not her fault, but it isn't yours either. It's the space between you that needs reckoning, a space filled with misunderstood silence and the eager need to be heard without being punished for it. You want to help? That's your instinct. You see a retreat. Feel the temperature drop in the room, and you go into action mode. Let me fix this, you think. Maybe you offer advice. Maybe you apologize for something you're not even sure you did. Maybe you tell her she's overthinking, that it's not a big deal. Anything to return to that comforting illusion of normalcy. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Your desire to fix her isn't about her pain. It's about your discomfort with it. She says, "I'm fine," and you feel the tension rise like a pressure cooker. You jump to soothe it, to get her smiling. Again, laughing, saying "I love you" with light in her voice. But underneath that heroic impulse is fear. The fear of not knowing how to hold space for what can't be solved. The fear of feeling useless. The fear of seeing her bleed emotionally and having nothing in your toolkit but a metaphorical band-aid. But she doesn't want a solution. She wants a witness. Not someone to make her feel better, someone to make her feel seen. When you rush to fix her pain, you accidentally confirm her greatest fear, that her feelings are too much, too messy, too inconvenient. So she shuts down further, and the cycle continues. Jung would say your need to fix is part of your own persona, the image. You present to the world that says, "I'm strong, I'm capable, I can handle this." But that persona becomes a prison when it keeps you from intimacy. Because real connection isn't about performing usefulness, it's about tolerating uncertainty. About sitting beside someone who's storm. You cannot stop and staying anyway. You might feel helpless in those moments. Good. That's exactly where transformation begins. In surrender, in humility, in realizing that not everyone wants a remedy. Some just want acknowledgement. So next time she says, "I'm fine," and your muscles tense with the urge to act, pause. Breathe. Don't rescue her, respect her. Ask. If she needs space or presence, not a plan, she'll feel the difference in her bones. You start to notice something strange. Her silence, once frustrating, now feels unsettling. Not because she's angry, not because she's cold, but because it holds a depth that swallows you whole. There's something in her stillness that makes you feel exposed, like she sees more than you'd like her to. She says, "I'm fine." But it lands like a mirror, and suddenly it's not who you're afraid of. It's what she reflects back to you. Carl Jung spoke often of the unconscious as a reservoir of shadow material and acknowledged fears, desires, and memories that shape our lives without our consent. And when she retreats behind that phrase, when her eyes look through you instead of at you, it stirs your own shadow. You feel small, inadequate, maybe even ashamed. Not because she said anything, but because she didn't have to. There's something ancient in her silence. It's like standing at the edge of a deep forest at dusk, where every tree seems to whisper something you don't want to hear. Her stillness dares you to see yourself. And that's what truly terrifies you. Because if she's not fine, and you didn't notice, or worse, didn't care enough to ask the right way, what does that say about you? You begin to project, to deflect. You accuse her of being passive-aggressive. You say, "Just tell me what you want." But she already did years ago, in ways you missed, in words you misunderstood. And now, you're not reacting to her pain. You're reacting to your own fear of failure. This is the part no one tells you about relationships. The deeper she goes into herself, the more she calls you into your own interior. And if you haven't been there lately, if you've been skating on the surface of emotional life, you'll flinch. You'll want to run. Not because she's dangerous, but because her depth demands your own. And maybe you're not ready. But here's the truth. If you can't meet her in the shadows, you can't truly love her in the light. Her "I'm fine" is a test, but it's not just about her. It's a riddle about you. You stay. You tell yourself you're strong enough to weather it. that things will get better. That if you just give her time, space, kindness, she'll open up again. And maybe she does, briefly. But then it happens again. Another moment, another I'm fine. Another wave of tension that makes the air too thick to breathe. You begin to normalize it. This emotional tightrope becomes your routine. You start to live in the pause between her words and her truth. But here's the cost of staying when she's fine. You begin to disappear, slowly, subtly, like mist in morning light. Not because she's erasing you, but because you're erasing yourself to make sense of her silence. You stop asking questions. You stop expressing needs. You begin to tiptoe through conversations, editing your feelings in real time to avoid another shutdown. And before you know it, you've become the peacekeeper of an emotional war no one declared. You're warned of the danger of staying unconscious in relationships, how unresolved patterns repeat. Not because we choose them, but because we refuse to see them. And when you ignore the quiet alarm that rings every time she says, I'm fine, you betray your own intuition. You trade truth for a temporary comfort. The irony. She might respect you more if you walked away, not out of spite, but out of clarity, because staying, while pretending everything is okay, teaches both of you to tolerate the intolerable. It validates avoidance, and avoidance, no matter how pretty it looks, is a slow poison. You may think you're being loyal, compassionate, mature, but what if your endurance is really fear in disguise? Fear of confrontation, fear of failure, fear of being the one who gave up. But staying in something that starves your spirit isn't noble, it's numb. Every time she says I'm fine, and you know she's not, ask yourself, what am I really staying for? Is it love or is it the fear of starting over? Because the moment you ignore your own need for a truth, you stop being a partner. You become a shadow of yourself. And she doesn't need a ghost. She needs someone alive. So what do you do the next time she says, I'm fine? You pause. You don't rush in with apologies. Don't scramble for solutions. Don't launch into questions she's not ready to answer. You don't assume she's lying or that she owes you the full truth in that moment. Instead, you lean into what Jung called awareness without demand. You really see her as layered. Complex psyche navigating centuries of conditioning, personal shadows, and unspoken fears, and you respond not to her words, but to her energy. You say something simple, something real, like, okay, if that ever changes, I'm here. And then you stay present, not hovering, not withdrawing, just present, a steady flame in the storm. Because the truth is, when a woman says, I'm fine, she's not necessarily asking for rescue. She's asking, can you handle my silence without making it about you? And maybe, just maybe, you start to become curious. You start to notice the subtle tells, the slight drop in her voice, the way her hands fidget when she's holding something back, the little smiles that don't quite reach her eyes. You begin to learn her emotional fingerprints, not to decode her like a puzzle, but to honor her humanity. There's no one-size-fits-all script. Some women say, I'm fine, and mean it. Some say it as a defense. Others say it because they don't know what else to say. The point isn't to crack the code. The point is to become the kind of person who doesn't need to. That starts with doing your own work, looking at your own projections, your own shadows, your need to fix, your fear of depth. When you bring awareness to yourself, you stop reacting and you start relating with presence, with gentleness, with courage, because in the end, it's not about whether she's fine or not. It's about whether you can meet her in the space between her words and her truth, without running. There's a quiet revolution in learning to sit with what makes you uncomfortable, especially when that discomfort wears the face of someone you love. Her I'm fine is not a challenge to decode, nor a game to win. It's A portal into her world, into yours, into the spaces where words fail but connection still waits. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be present, to stop fearing silence and start listening to what exists beneath it. The journey of awareness isn't linear, and it's rarely easy, but it is sacred. And when you walk it with humility, you'll find that both you and she become more whole. Because the real magic isn't in fixing what's broken. It's in seeing what's been buried and holding it with both hands. Thank you for walking this path today. If this resonated with you, please like, share, and comment your thoughts or stories below. I read everyone. And make sure to subscribe, because in the next video, we'll explore how emotional boundaries shape attraction and self-worth in relationships. Until then, stay curious and stay awake.